Welcome back. When we look back at the golden era of Indian cinema, it's so easy to get swept up in the lights, the cameras, and just the sheer magic of it all, right? But sometimes the stories unfolding when the cameras actually stop rolling are way more dramatic and honestly far more tragic than any script a writer could come up with. Today we're unpacking a very specific, heartbreaking truth about one of the most beloved and legendary icons in Bollywood history. We're going to piece together the historical accounts she left behind to really understand the heavy burden she carried. So, our focus today is really on that stark contrast, the gap between a glamorous public persona and a pretty devastating private reality. We often just assume that immense fame and talent, sort of insulate a superstar from everyday hardships. But as you'll see, a story of incredibly passionate love can sometimes lead to a sudden, impulsive rupture. And mending that rupture, well, sometimes that requires a compromise so devastating it literally alters a person's life forever.
Section 1. Tragic Superstar, Bollywood's Icon.
Okay, let's dive into this. The woman you're looking at is famously known worldwide as Meena Kumari, but her real name, the identity she was actually born with, was Maja Been Bano. Now, she wasn't just an actress, she was an absolute powerhouse of emotion on screen. She captivated millions with her incredibly expressive eyes and just unmatched talent. Yet, almost like a cruel twist of fate, the intense tragedy she so often portrayed in her films would ultimately mirror the very real, tragic reality of her own private life. Section 2. Marriage and Divorce. An impulsive act. So, behind the scenes of her soaring career, Meena Kumari fell in love with and married the film director Kamal Amrohi. And by all accounts from the historical sources, they shared a very deep, intense bond. However, intensity can kind of be a double-edged sword, right? According to the accounts, during a moment of really intense anger, Kamal Amrohi impulsively divorced her. Literally just like that, in a sudden fit of rage, their legal union was completely shattered. Now, this definitely wasn't a slow, calculated separation. Let's look at how fast this played out. In phase 1, the divorce happens incredibly swiftly, driven purely by anger. But then, almost immediately, we hit phase 2. Amrohi realizes the immense gravity of what he just did. The anger fades, leaving behind this profound regret. And then in phase 3, we really see the enduring power of their connection. Because despite the hurt, Meena Kumari still loved him deeply. They both arrived at the exact same conclusion. They desperately wanted to be together again. They wanted to remarry. Section 3, the halala obstacle, a massive wall. But here's where things get extremely complicated. In their specific social and religious context at the time, a divorced couple couldn't just, change their minds and instantly remarry. There was a strict, mandatory condition known as halala. Basically, it's the legally and religiously mandatory process required before a divorced couple can actually remarry each other. And this rule stood firmly between Meena Kumari and the man she desperately wanted to reunite with. It became the absolute biggest obstacle in their path. To actually fulfill this mandatory condition and legally clear the path back to Amrohi, there were very specific steps that had to be taken. Step 1. Meena Kumari had to marry another man. According to the historical texts, this marriage was arranged with a man named Aman-Ullah Khan. And as a quick, fascinating historical side note here, he happens to be the father of another famous actress, Zeenat Aman. Then came step 2, which involved completing this new marriage process entirely. That was the only recognized way to legally dissolve the barrier, clearing the path so she could finally return to Kamal Amrohi. Section 4. Painful realization, the human cost. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is this. We really cannot just look at this as some simple checklist of historical events. For Meena Kumari, fulfilling that halala condition wasn't merely a procedural hurdle. The source material makes it incredibly, painfully clear that this entire experience caused her deep, profound mental and emotional trauma. The psychological toll of having to literally marry a stranger simply to return to the man she loved, it left scars that would never fully heal. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast we've been talking about. Adorned in traditional, beautiful bridal attire, she looks every bit the glamorous, iconic superstar. But when you know the context of what she was actually forced to endure, this visual takes on a deeply sorrowful tone. Because right beneath the heavy jewelry and the beautiful garments was an even heavier emotional burden. She was carrying the crushing weight of immense personal trauma, essentially suffering quietly while the entire world just watched her shine. I want to slow down for a second here, because we actually have Meena Kumari's own words to help us understand her agony. In her autobiography, she directly addressed this incredibly dark period of her life. Just read this quote with me. "What kind of life is this, that in the name of religion I had to hand over my body to someone else? What is the difference between me and a prostitute now?" Just let the gravity of those words sink in for a moment. This is a devastating, heartbreaking realization from a woman whose identity and autonomy were completely fractured by the strict rules she felt forced to follow. Which leaves us with a really heavy but vital question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. What is the true cost of fulfilling strict societal rules in the name of love? I mean, yes, Meena Kumari achieved her ultimate goal of reuniting with Amrohi, but the price she paid was an existential crisis and a truly broken spirit. Her tragic reality reminds us that right behind the glittering facade of history's biggest stars, there are often profound, very human struggles. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.